Thank you for clicking on this video. This novel was made by manofcultureleon on webnovel. But let's stop wasting your time, so.
Shut up, clock in and load up.
Chapter 6, Local Heroes. Cole POV. Plopping down on one of the new couches, I asked my grandfather how the meetings went. Assuring me that everything was on track, he told me it would be a few months before we got word back. Things were now in queue for review and approval from the city, prefecture, and the national government, which took a long time to complete. Knowing full well, having been a demon lord and king, I wasn't that surprised we had a long time to wait. Did you subdue any more villains today? He asked me. A few, but nothing noteworthy, just a couple of purse snatchers and a thief, I replied. I am going to meet with an old friend in the morning. You should probably introduce yourself to some of the local heroes, he suggested. I will keep that in mind, I answered as I pulled up an app to order dinner. What do you want to eat? Suggesting we order some sushi, I found a good restaurant nearby and placed our order. Eating dinner together, my grandfather turned in early as he had a meeting with an old friend first thing in the morning. Telling him good night, I decided to head out for the evening. Jumping around from building to building, I watched the city take on a completely different aura. Now that night was settling in, people were out with family and friends for dinner. Keeping an eye out for any of All for One's lackeys, I wanted to get an exact location on him. At this point, he should still be laid up from the beating All Might gave him, but that may not be true now. I still hadn't found any signs of problems here, so I wanted to know where potential threats were before things got crazy. Both All for One and the Doctor are my top priority, they are too dangerous to not know where they are at. Unfortunately, I can't use my magic, or I might blow my cover, so I will have to settle for locating their bases of operation for now, I thought. Spending 2 hours scouring the city looking for signs of activity, I came up with nothing, which wasn't surprising. Since I couldn't remember the dive bar they hid at or the Doctor's actual name, my first real encounter would be at UA. With my grandfather's connections, it shouldn't be difficult to get in there. Jumping down from a 3-story building, I walked into a coffee shop to order something to drink. As I walked in, I saw a familiar bunny-eared hero looking at the menu. Asking her if she was in line, she replied that she wasn't at the moment. Hey, wait a second, you're that new international hero everyone is talking about, Mirko said, recognizing my outfit. Aren't you hot in that thing? No, I am quite comfortable actually, I chuckled with a smile. Walking up to the counter, I placed an order for a large white chocolate mocha. Paying for the coffee, Mirko asked me what I could recommend, as she wasn't used to drinking coffee. If you aren't used to it, why are you drinking it? I asked. Because my usual sports drinks are out of stock, she replied. What, carrot juice? I teased her. Yes, my usual shop is out till the next delivery truck arrives in 2 days, she answered without skipping a beat. Asking the lady behind the counter if they could make a carrot cake latte, she gave me a confused look. Telling her the recipe, one that I learned in my first transmigration, she did as I said and handed a cup to Mirko. Taking a sip of it, I watched her ears twitch around with delight before she quickly recovered herself. This is pretty good. Where did you learn to make this? Mirko questioned. Someone dear to me taught me to make it, it's a variation on her grandmother's recipe, I replied with a solemn grin. Sensing that I didn't want to go into further detail, she thanked me for the suggestion. Paying for her drink, I said it was my way of saying hello since I would be here for a while. Telling her I'd see her around, I left with my coffee in hand and took a spot up on a roof a block away. It must be a rabbit girl thing, Evelyn loved it when I made her coffee, I thought, remembering my blue-haired bunny girl lover. Mirko's ear twitching reminds me a lot of her, I just didn't get slapped around by them, huh? Flashback. It was a cold day in the country of Ale Star, winter had come early and everyone was left scrambling to secure enough supplies for winter. The harvest that year was better than the last, but it still wasn't going to be enough to feed everyone. Unfortunately, catching up on food production took time, and since the world was in a bad state, there was inevitably going to be starvation. Aaron, You shouldn't beat yourself up, we are in a much better place than we were last year, Luna the rabbitkin said, trying to console me. A lot more people are going to see the spring because of you. That is something to be proud of. I know, I remarked, looking at the empty food stalls. It still doesn't change the fact that families are going to have to decide who lives and who dies. Making that call, I don't think I could make that decision. I'd rather starve than watch my family wither away while I watch. And that's why the races placed their faith in you, she replied with a warm smile. In 2 years we won't be in the situation anymore, and things can go back to what they used to be. Giving her a small smile, I thanked her for trying to cheer me up. Seeing children running around playing in the snow, the signs of the famine and plague that had rocked this world for nearly 50 years were still visible. The work I had done had helped bring an end to the plague, and I hoped the famine would disappear in a few years. Why don't go back to the castle, and make some of that coffee drink, Luna suggested. Grandma said her carrot tea was good when you were sick, so your carrot cake coffee must make you feel good when you are sad. Huh, I think the real answer is you want something sweet again, I chuckled as I gave her a hug. Alright, let's get going. Arya will probably want some coffee too, she's been locked in the library all night. Heading to the castle's kitchen, Luna ran off to fetch Arya while I got to work brewing coffee. When I arrived in Ale Star, coffee was almost completely unheard of and wasn't cultivated anywhere. I introduced coffee to the public and it became an overnight success. Since coffee pots weren't a thing here, I had to resort to the old-fashioned method of drip coffee. Using the spell Summon Merchant, I used gold to buy several syrups and carrots from the vendor. Summon Merchant was a spell that only the hero could use, and it allowed me to buy goods from my previous world for use here. Since electricity wasn't a thing, all electronics were out of the question, and bulk food simply cost far too much, so feeding the public wasn't an option. That said, all the seeds that were being used by farmers were purchased through the merchant, so it did help us out that way. Aaron, Luna grunted. Arya was asleep on the floor again. Dragging the sleeping kitsune into the kitchen, Luna started shaking her to wake her up. After a few minutes of shouting, Arya woke up and smacked Luna away. Picking herself up, she demanded to know why she was in the kitchen. And why her head hurt. Wait, did someone help you carry me down the stairs? The library is on the 3rd floor, Arya pointed out. Hee, no one helped me at all, Luna said nervously. If you weren't so heavy, I might have been able to carry you. What was that? Arya hissed, grabbing her by the throat. I am not fat. Don't you ever say that again. Arya and Luna were best friends, though they had an odd way of showing it. Laughing at what I was seeing, I told them that everything was ready now. Sliding their coffee mugs to them, Arya dropped Luna and walked away like she wasn't just strangling her friend. Your coffee is good as always, Arya told me. Pulling herself up off the ground, Luna leaned on the counter trying to catch her breath. Once she had recovered, she took her cup and stood next to me for fear Arya would resume choking her after she finished her coffee. Taking a sip, she grew a big grin on her face as her rabbit ears started spinning around like a helicopter blade. Luna, your ears are acting up again, Arya stated. I can't help it, Luna shouted, it's so good. At least stop hitting Aaron, Arya protested. Realizing that she was hitting me, she stepped just out of reach for her ears and continued drinking her coffee. Taking the opportunity to get me caught up on her findings, Arya took the next 30 minutes going over various places the Kingdom of Dorne had been hemorrhaging coin. Flashback end. Recalling those days, I missed the time I spend with my lovers. Things may have not always gone to plan, but we always had each other's back no matter what. Stopping my walk down memory lane, I continued my patrolling for another hour before calling it a night. Next day, getting up at 8 the next morning, Grandpa was already gone for the day, leaving me a note saying he was having breakfast with his friend. He told me to do as I pleased today. Deciding to explore the city more, I got dressed and headed out for the day. Locking the door behind me, I only got a few steps from the house before someone started calling out to me. "Excuse me, you wouldn't happen to be Lightning Jack's grandson, would you?" a voice said from the gate. Glancing over in that direction, I saw Nizu standing there with a smile on his face. Walking over, I confirmed that I was his grandson and asked how I could help the principal of UA. "Oh, so you already know who I am, that makes things easier," Nizu stated. "I was going to ask if your grandfather and you wanted to come to the test we are holding today. You are going to be needing able-bodied people to work in your branch here. This is a good opportunity to see the next generation of heroes." "Ah," I thought, "unfortunately my grandfather is out with an old friend of his, but I can certainly attend if that is all right." "We can head out now if you are ready," he told me. Telling him I could get us there quickly, I took his hand and zipped into a power line. Getting us to the school in less than a second, Nizu looked around in confusion and then at me. "What did you just do?" he asked. "I turned us both into pure energy and transmitted us through the power lines," I chuckled with a smirk. "So do you want to show me where the testing area is?" Nodding his head, he snapped out of his daze before taking the lead. Pointing out the state-of-the-art facilities they had at UA, Nizu proudly told me about the success rate for graduates of the school's hero program. Taking me to the replica city they had on site, he led me to the command center where the staff and a few pro heroes were already gathered. "Who's this kid?" Endeavor asked, pointing at me. "The name's Kessler," I replied. "Ah, the newest generation of the Bolt family," Endeavor grumbled, looking back at the screen. "You better watch it, old man, I might put you into retirement earlier than you want," I thought before turning my attention to All Might, who was walking over to me. Shaking my hand with a loud laugh, he greeted me with his signature big smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Your grandfather Lightning Jack was an excellent mentor during my time in the States," he told me. "I may have only spent a few weeks at your family's agency, but your grandfather had a big impact on my career. My condolences on the passing of your Gianninin. She was a lovely lady as well." "Thank you," I replied. "He was mentored by Grandpa." "What the hell?" Introducing me to everyone else, I felt Midnight looking me over with a smile. Interested in what she saw, there was nothing about her I wanted a part of. Sure, she was good-looking, but I wasn't into BDSM. I once made the mistake of dating a woman into that stuff, and that is a mistake I will not repeat. "Alright everyone, the test is about to begin," Nizu stated as the monitor flicked onto the starting line. Chapter 7, The Hacker. Cole POV. As the siren started sounding, signaling the beginning of the test, I turned my attention toward the overview map of the area. I already knew what each kid's quirk was, so I wasn't really concerned with that. Since I had seen anything wrong in this world up till now, I suspected maybe something here might be out of whack. Watching the training bots start lighting up on the map, I expected them to prioritize the closest participant, but that wasn't what happened. As soon as applicants got in range, alarms started going off in the control room. "What's going on?" Midnight asked Power Loader. "Something isn't right, the safety measures are being disabled," Power Loader said, quickly getting into a nearby control terminal. While he tried to diagnose the issue, I watched hundreds of robots come online on the map. As the machines started crashing through buildings, many of the applicants froze up in fear. Throwing debris at them, the kids were diving for cover while a few of them attempted to fight back. Knowing that only a few had actual combat experience, they were sitting ducks without any aid. "Figure out what the hell is going on." "I am going," I told them as I zipped into a nearby socket. Arriving on the scene a moment later, I shot myself out of a street light and launched a barrage of rockets at the incoming projectiles. Blasting them to pieces, I told the kids to get to safety immediately as this wasn't part of the test. Complying with my orders, most of the kids ran to cover while a few stayed behind. "What's the big deal? This is what the test should have been," Bakugo shouted as he ran towards the approaching robots. As he got close to one of them, I sensed that its power system started going into a meltdown. Dashing forward, I tackled him and burst through a glass window for cover. Shielding him with my body, he started to yell at me till the robot exploded, sending shrapnel everywhere. Seeing a nearby building collapse from the blast, he realized that he might have died. "What the hell was that?" he spat. "Someone hacked the school's systems, get going before more of them blow," I ordered, "follow the others and get to safety. Now isn't the time for you to be playing hero, kid." Running back outside, I saw Shoto attempting to freeze several robots in place. Shouting at him to get out of there as several rockets were launched at him, he immediately created a wall of ice, likely hoping it would protect him. Reducing his shield to dust, he and the others nearby were sent sailing into a brick wall. Hitting the wall hard, the applicants were left dazed and confused for a few moments. Getting between the robots and the kids, I created several magnetic fields that disrupted the trajectory of the following missiles. Returning their attacks back at them, the robots were blown to pieces, though more quickly came from other parts of the city. "Kessler, I can't take control of the robots, and the emergency shutdown command isn't working. Some of the teachers are en route to help you, get the kids out of there," Power Loader said over the PA system. "There should be an emergency shelter a few blocks east of you." "That's easier said than done," I replied, launching another barrage of missiles at the robots. "Is the whole system compromised or just the robots?" "Right now it's just the robots. I have a few of my students trying to fight whoever is in our system," he answered. "Right now we are barely managing to keep the comms up." "Nizu, I assume destroying all the robots isn't an issue?" I inquired. "I don't need a bill from UA for destroying your equipment." "The safety of the children outweighs the equipment, do what you need to do," Nizu answered. With permission to take the gloves off, I cracked a smile as lightning started to dance around me. As I was building up a charge, I turned back to Shoto and the others. "All of you grab onto something, and hold on as if your life depends on it," I told them. "What are you going to do?" Izuku asked. "Clean up this mess," I said as the charge-up was completed. Gathering the energy between my forearms, I spun around once and let it all go. At once. -3 RD person POV. Feeling the air suddenly start trying to pull them away, the applicants nearby grabbed on to anything they could. Hearing a loud roar, almost as loud as a freight train, Izuku looked over his shoulder and saw a massive tornado barreling down the street. "What the hell?" Bakugo shouted, barely audible over the wind. "He can summon tornadoes." "That's not a normal tornado," Ida remarked. "Tornadoes don't give off dash." Watching a bolt of lightning shot out of the whirlwind, everything it touched was reduced to nothing. Glancing over at the hero who had shown up out of nowhere, he seemed to have perfect control over the lightning tornado. "What in the world?" May said with excitement, watching the live feed. "I haven't heard of someone doing that before." "It is indeed rather amazing," Nizu agreed, watching the robots get sucked into the tornado and torn apart. "He is far stronger than I imagined. All Might and Eraserhead, are you seeing this?" Only a few blocks from the fighting now, the pro-heroes were watching the destruction Kessler was causing. Having never seen him in action before, all of them were relieved he wasn't a villain, as he could seriously hurt a lot of people. With that power. I expected nothing less from Lightning Jack's grandson, All Might. Laughed. Arriving on the scene a few minutes later, the tornado was starting to dissipate, leaving behind a trail of destruction. Not only had the storm destroyed the robots, but it had also destroyed nearly 3 city blocks of buildings. Watching electricity start shooting out of the power lines, all of them watched Kessler absorb the energy like a sponge. "The kids are over here," Kessler said, pointing at the terrified children. "There is also one in that building over there, but you can probably leave him." "I heard that, you bastard," Bakugo shouted as he jumped out the broken window. "Meh, you seem sure of yourself enough, so why should I be worried?" Kessler teased him. "Fuck you," Bakugo roared in anger. 11. Confirming that everyone was alright, Present Mike and Eraserhead went to retrieve the other applicants. Turning back to them, Kessler gave the pro heroes a firm nod, signaling that it was done. Could you maybe do a little less destruction next time? Some of us have to. Repair the damage, Cementos requested of Kessler. I will see what I can do, Kessler chuckled. I don't get to cut loose that often, so it's relaxing to do it every once in a while. With the robots destroyed, the last thing to worry about was catching the perp responsible for this. As they were about to discuss how to proceed next, an angry voice came over the PA system. Damn it! What sort of cheat quirk do you have? A distorted voice howled. Seeing a tall, fat man appear on screens all over the school, everyone turned their attention to him. The man looked like he had never seen the sun, never exercised, and never left his mother's basement. He appeared to reflect what everyone would consider a deadbeat man-child. Because of you, I am going to lose out on a big payday, the man seethed in anger. Why did you have to bring that bastard here? I have seen your face before, you are on the Hero Association's most wanted list, Shoto said, remembering his poster in his father's agency. Technomaster, number 7 on the list, Kessler stated. What's a guy like you doing here? Your thing is stealing government documents and military intelligence. I haven't heard of you attacking schools before. You are right, my genius is wasted on attacking shitty dumps like this. Unfortunately for you, I had a very wealthy client ask me to cause a bit of death and chaos here. Technomaster laughed. 10 million juicy American dollars to kill a couple of brats and cause the school to close. All of that would have been mine, but you got in my fucking way. Weren't you supposed to not want to be a hero? Giving him a smirk, Kessler acknowledged that was the case. I have never been one for heroing because there are far too many fakes out there. Not only that, coming from a dynastic line of heroes means I had no say in the matter. It was always expected of me to be a hero regardless of whether or not I wanted to be. In most situations I would do the bare minimum needed, but, Kessler said, merged into the television. Backing away in horror, Technomaster was in disbelief that Kessler could enter the screen like him. Turning to flee, he attempted to run away, but Kessler appeared right in front of him. Grabbing him by the face, Kessler stared at him like he was a piece of garbage. A brief crackle of red lightning flickered from Kessler's arm before he threw Technomaster out of the monitor. Flying out of the monitor in the control room, Technomaster crashed into the back wall, gasping for air. Calmly walking out of the monitor, Kessler put his hands in his pockets as he approached. Squealing like a stuck pig, the villain pleaded for mercy from Kessler. If it were anyone else they'd probably show you mercy, Kessler told him. Unfortunately for you, I don't have mercy for child killers. Vanishing from sight, Kessler slammed his left knee square into the villain's face. A split second later, dozens of impacts hit Technomaster as he passed out from the pain. Having broken nearly every bone in his body, he wouldn't be in any condition to move around for months. Splashing some water on his face to wake him back up, Kessler threatened him to stay in prison. Don't you dare ever think of escaping prison, it's the only place I won't go looking for you, Kessler said in a cold, uncaring tone. Why, yes sir, the villain shrieked in fear as his face turned paler. Leaving him be, Kessler turned back to Nizu and the others who were in shock. Cole POV. Is that really necessary? Nizu questioned. He was more than willing to kill a bunch of kids. Don't lecture me on excessive use of force, I remarked, looking at Power Loader. Did you find out how he got into the system? I assume you have special firewalls to block people like him from gaining access to the school systems. Right, Power Loader said, getting back to the matter at hand. There are no signs of him accessing the school from the outside. That means he had help getting in. I have no way of knowing how long he's been in the system, as everything is a mess right now. This is going to take days to rebuild. Everything is a mess right now. This is going to take days to rebuild. Knowing who likely got him into the system, I opted not to say anything as I had no solid proof. If he was smart, he would have destroyed the evidence in the chaos. That said, I wasn't about to let him off the hook so easily for that. Thanks to making a copy of Technomaster's quirk, I should be able to bug his cell phone without him knowing. I am going to have to learn how to use it first, once I have the hang of it I can. Have him lead me to All for One, I thought. It will also get me access to the Hero Association's quirk database too. Chapter 8, Part-Time Offer. Cole POV. Handing Technomancer over to the authorities, I stuck around for a bit to help restore power to the areas I had damaged. Getting everything sorted out by lunchtime, I was offered a free meal for my assistance today. Joining the staff and pro-heroes in Lunch Rush's cafeteria, I was surprised by how good his cooking was. All these years of cooking for students hadn't dulled his culinary talent in the slightest. "This is really good. You ever competed in a competition before?" I asked him. Nodding his head, he informed me that he had won many competitions in the past. As I was enjoying my steak sandwich, I asked Power Loader how badly the computer systems were damaged. I knew he mentioned early that it would take several days to repair, but now that he had more time to survey the damage, I was curious if the timetable changed. "We have computer backups to restore the majority of the school's systems, but Technomaster did a number on the hardware," Power Loader stated with a defeated sigh. "Several servers are completely fried, and the security system is down too. We will probably be down for at least 2 weeks waiting on hardware replacements. All our systems are custom built, so keeping spares around was just too expensive." "Just out of curiosity, did he take any data?" I inquired. "I can't imagine he'd go through all of this just to kill a few people." "The logs are completely wiped out and corrupted. If he did take something, we have no way of knowing," he replied, rubbing his forehead. "Thanks to this whole ordeal, we will implement physical shutoffs now so we can isolate intrusions. In addition, I will have to build a completely separate system for my robots to shut them off should someone hijack them." Even though this was an utter failure, some good came out of it. Nodding my head, I was happy to see that he was still optimistic about everything. Most genius types I had met in the past would have fallen into a depression for some time because someone outsmarted them. It was nice to see a brilliant mind not beaten down by a single defeat. Knowing that this was a good opportunity to broach the subject of why the attack happened in the first place, I decided to go for it. "I think it goes without saying, but what was so special about the group this year? This campus has been open for a long time, and from what I recall this was the first real breach of security," I pointed out. "All staff members were on hand today, and several agencies had scouts here looking for potential new hires. There had to be someone specifically they were after. The guy said he was paid to kill several kids to force the school to close," Endeavor stated. "I don't think there is much more to it." "Still though, why this year then?" "I think there is more to it than that. Were there any unique individuals here, Nizu?" I inquired. Taking a moment to think about it, Nizu told me that no one really stood out. He admitted that Shoto and Momo might be potential targets, due to their family names, but he was pretty sure they weren't the targets. No one had made an attempt on their lives in several years, and both families had people listening for any potential threats to their children. If they were the targets, the families would have known about it. Agreeing with his assessment, I asked to speak with All Might and him after lunch. Purposefully keeping it vague, I didn't want other people to try and weasel their way into the meeting. Agreeing to the meeting with confused looks, we finished our meal and headed to Nizu's office. Making sure that we weren't followed, I shut the door behind us and looked at All Might. "All right, Toshinori, you don't have to put up a front here," I said with a nod. "You are probably getting close to your limit, you can relax already. I am fully aware you aren't the invincible symbol of peace the public thinks you are." Looking at me with a horrified look, I told him I was well aware that he was no longer really fit to be patrolling the streets. Stating that he had been slowly becoming less active over the past few years, I said it started when he got seriously injured by a certain villain a few years back. Assuring him that I had no desire to expose his secret, I told him today's attack was likely aimed at him. "What do you mean?" he said, reverting to his civilian appearance. "Knew I was going to be here today." "No one. All for One knows you won't last another 2 years at this rate. If you were going to hand off One for All, now would be the time to do it while you can train your successor. He paid Technomancer to cause havoc here to test your current level of strength," I told him. your successor ended up showing that he is far from ready to fill your shoes. I mean, poor Izuku is in the clinic because he broke his arm fighting a robot. Wait, how do you know all this? All Might asked me. My abilities extend far past manipulating electricity. I am also able to tap into bioelectricity that every human has. I collected this information from Technomancer's mind. He transmitted the data back to All for One already, I replied. For now your limit is still under wraps thanks to me destroying his test. Clenching his fist, I could see the pain on his face. There was a lot more I could tell him right now, but if I did he'd probably exhaust himself trying to fix things. His mentor's grandson was already far too gone to be saved now, All FO1 had seen to that. I would keep this information a secret for now till his quirk was gone, then I would tell him. I knew it was cruel, but telling what Shigaraki went through would only break his heart. So is All for One able to fight right now? Nizu asked. No, he is still currently laid up from his last fight with All Might. That said, someone has been helping heal him. The memories from Technomaster show him hooked up to an 4 drip and several other medical devices, I advised. This changes things quite a lot, Nizu said. Do you have memories of who helped him breach our security? Unfortunately not. He loaded himself onto a thumb drive and waited for someone to plug him into your system. Since he couldn't see the world around him, I don't know who plugged him in and where the initial intrusion happened, I replied. Thanking me for providing the information to them, Nizu inquired why I didn't want to share this with the other people at lunch. Simply put, it had to have been someone that knew All Might was going to be here, I remarked. Izuku isn't the culprit, All Might isn't, and you aren't the culprit as you know his secret. If you were the mole, there would have been no need to test All Might. How would they have known I would be here though? Toshinori questioned. I didn't tell anyone about my visit today. Easy, you need to learn to train him in a more private setting, I chuckled. Letting out a sigh, Toshinori held his face in his hands. It really never occurred to him that someone would have seen him on the beach with Izuku. Izuku applied for UA, it's not that far stretched to figure out someone tipped him off for a reward, I told them. If All Might picked him as a successor, he was going to show up today to watch over him. Seeing the full picture now, both men felt conflicted about how to proceed. On one hand, they wanted to find who the traitor was, but on the other hand, they felt bad for suspecting their colleagues. Trying to figure out how to proceed with this newfound information, I saw Nizu's eyes light up for a moment. Kessler, how would you feel about working here? Nizu asked. I have been a pro for less than a week. You sure you want to hire me? I questioned. I think it's a good idea. You were personally trained by one of the state's former best heroes. There are a lot of things you could teach the students, Abu. That most couldn't, Nizu insisted. You do know that I have to patrol regularly to maintain my international license, right? I replied. Telling me I could teach part-time, he seemed insistent on me working here. Since it worked out in my favor, since I could be on campus when Shigaraki Nomu showed up, I decided to accept the position of part-time teacher. After filling some paperwork out, I headed out to go on patrol for a bit. -3 RD person POV. Why did you offer him a position like that out of the blue? Toshinori asked. Nizu. We need a neutral party assessing things. You and I would overlook things since we have personal relationships with the staff, Nizu remarked looking out the window. Now only that, I get the feeling that he is hiding his true power for some reason. I don't think he is a bad person, he just has a lot of pear buried behind a facade. I should probably pay his grandfather a visit, Toshinori admitted. He's with Gran Torino right now, why don't we invite them over? Nizu suggested. Agreeing to it, Nizu made a quick call to their mutual friend, requesting that Lightning Jack and he come to see them at UA. Gran Torino asked if something was wrong. Telling him that the test had to be rescheduled due to a security breach, Nizu assured him that none of the children were seriously harmed. That's good to hear, Lightning Jack said over the phone. It was all thanks to your grandson, I invited him here this morning and he was the first on the scene to help, Nizu told him. Cole did, he gasped. Yes, I wanted to review some things with both of you that he brought to our attention. Can you be here in 20 minutes or so, Nizu requested. Stating that they were only 2 blocks away at a diner, they said they would head over immediately. Showing up 10 minutes later, Nizu told them about what happened and how Cole devastated the training dummies with ease. Showing the security footage of the fight, Jack's face grimaced when Cole spoke about fake heroes. His grandson had never spoken to him about this but knew exactly why he thought that. He knew his son prioritized fame, power, and wealth above his own son's happiness. Admittedly, he knew that Cole had suffered a lot while he and Cole's mother stood idly by. For the sake of her marriage she gave up trying to protect Cole, and he had just followed the same path he took with David because it's all he knew how to do. Jack, are you okay? Gran Torino questioned, seeing his friend's conflicted expression. Yeah, I am fine, I am happy our training paid off. He may have overboard, but it was for the right reason, Jack said with a fake smile. Gone a bit. He has accepted a part-time position here at the school. I am thinking of putting him in charge of urban combat training, Nizu stated. That was something you excelled in, so I am sure Kessler is the same. He is far better than I ever was, it's like second nature to him, Jack chuckled. He's been training for over 10 years now. Jack knew he had to talk to Cole tonight, and have a heart-to-heart with him. He felt partially responsible for his viewpoint on heroing. Knowing he had failed his son David growing up, Jack wanted to try and help Cole before he went down the path his father did.
Chapter 9, A Heart-to-Heart. Cole POV, Evening. Unexpectedly, the incident at UA made it onto the news both in Japan and internationally. Fortunately, they only played snippets of my fight with the robots and my capture of Technomaster, but it was still enough to warrant several calls from my parents. Mom was extremely worried about my safety as the news apparently didn't report on my status. She was concerned that I may have been critically injured in the fight. Dad, on the other hand, praised me for a job well done and said that several news agencies were wanting to have an interview with me. Promising him that I would consider it, I reminded Dad that I had a lot going on at the moment. Not only was still getting used to being a pro hero, I told Dad that I was now a part-time teacher at UA. The reason I was telling him this now was that if I didn't, Grandpa would, so it was simpler to get it over with. Congratulating me on the new position, he told me to keep climbing to the top of the popularity charts. Ending the call shortly after that, I spent the rest of the afternoon experimenting with Technomaster's quirk interface. Coming home just before sunset, Grandpa asked me to sit down with him to talk. Figuring Nizu had called him, I braced myself for more pleading with me to take over the agency. Taking a seat in front of him, the first words out of his mouth was an apology to me. I am sorry, Cole, I have been a failure to you as a grandfather, he said, bowing his head. Asking him what was going on, he told me he had seen all the security footage from this morning. You are right, Cole, there are a lot of fake heroes in this line of work. Far too many people are in it for the paycheck, and care little for the people they save/protect, he explained. It's clear you know that your father is one of them, that the fame, fortune, and prestige that comes from our family business has corrupted him. Your grandmother and mother tried to keep you out of this, but it fell our deaf ears. Both your father and I pushed this on you, and I am sorry that I had a hand in it. Grandpa, I know that Grandma, Mom, and you care a lot about me. I also know that deep down Dad does too, but it's frustrating that you all keep referring to this as a business. Saving a person's life isn't a business, I told him, looking him dead in the eyes. I didn't jump into that fight today because I got paid to do it. I did it because if I didn't, those kids would have gone home in a body bag. Staring at me, he looked shocked that I would say that. Too many heroes look at a situation and evaluate the worth of involving themselves. Some heroes may think it's beneath them, while others might think letting a few civilians die will make the bounty on a villain go up, thereby giving them a bigger payday. I continued, by making it all about business you put a monetary value on everyone's life. That is wrong and you know it. Just because someone may be poor, ill, young, or old doesn't make their life any more or less valuable. I am not Dash, he tried to say, but I cut him off. You may not realize it, but you do think that way. If you had to choose between saving people or pursuing a perp, what would you do? I asked him point blank. I mean, that depends on, he started to say before he stopped himself. Oh Lord. It depends on the situation, but that shouldn't be the answer. Someone else will help them, is what you would think, and keep going. The problem with that is, what if everyone behind you makes that same decision? I said, recalling my second life as a sage. The hero in that world paraded himself around like he was God's gift to the world and was doing things for the greater good. I lost count of the number of times he and the rest of the party chased down enemies while leaving injured people behind. He was so stuck on the idea that a hero has to catch/kill the villain that when it came to being worried about civilians, he completely ignored them when villains were around. I was like that too for a while as the hero. It took a slap from an angry mother holding her dead child for me to wake up. Instead of using my healing magic to close his wounds when I was running by, I pursued a group of bandits believing that they were the higher priority. The problem was I had a ranger in my group, so we could have tracked them down easily after tending to the child. I thought, remembering how angry she was at me for choosing glory over a child. Realizing that I had just crossed a line by insinuating he was in it for some benefit, I quickly corrected myself. I am sorry, Grandpa, I am not saying everyone is it in for money and fame. Sometimes people get caught up on that title and think they always have to catch the criminal to live up to it. In reality, sometimes being a hero means just showing up and showing that you care, I stated, placing a hand on his shoulder. Giving me a smile, he agreed with that statement. You are far wiser than a young man your age should be, he chuckled. I would have expected this lecture from Gran Torino or even Toshinori, but not my grandson. Cole, I am sorry it took me this long to realize what we have been doing is wrong. It's okay, Grandpa, it's hard to break the cycle. It's been going on now for several generations, I don't hold it against you. I just wish Dad had stuck to his guns as a kid, maybe he would have been a better dad if had. I said. Anyways, enough with the heavy talking, let's go get some drinks. The legal age is 20 here, so let's go enjoy ourselves a bit. Giving me a smile, he agreed to it and went out to a bar with me. Next day. Waking up the next morning at 8 a.m., I continued messing around with interface as I tried to master it. The quirk had two abilities. The first allows the users to physically enter tech like a piece of software. The second function was that once inside, the user had complete and unhindered control of the tech. It is limited though by how quickly one can think. That's probably why UA was able to keep Technomaster from taking control of other system functions. That means that Technomaster was actually pretty intelligent even though he acted like a punk. I thought, either way this really extends my abilities even more. Since I can get almost anywhere via power lines, that means I can get into many isolated networks to retrieve crucial data. Having already tested out the quirk by accessing private files from the Japanese Hero Association branch, I had gathered quite a lot of useful intel. For example, the organization was well aware of what Endeavor had done to his family yet never acted on it. Since he produced excellent results, they had opted to not make a big deal out of it and let it slide. The fact that they would let Japan's number 2 hero get away with that spoke to how bad the organization really was. Not only that, they already knew All For One survived his last clash with All Might but never told him. They are even aware of what happened to Shigaraki too, I muttered looking through the files. So not only does All For One have a lot of sway in the media, he has allies in the Hero Association too. This is definitely different from the storyline I know. I wonder why it changed. Either way, All For One has access to quirk data from the Hero Association, which is a terrible thing for everyone. That means he basically can make a shopping list of quirks to take, and know where to find the heroes at their place of residence. In addition to that, he knows when powerful heroes die that he can have made into Nomu. My first step will be to cut off his supply of corpses. The dead deserve to be buried with dignity and not be experimented on like lab rats. I will probably want to have some help from local heroes too. Something this big needs people with pull to be involved. Nizu, All Might, and Mirko are all people I can involve, but not quite yet. Right now this is all just on paper, and the association will claim they are forged documents. I need physical proof that this is going on, and I will need to get help with that. I said to myself, there are just too many places to cover properly, I can't be everywhere at once right now. There were quirks I could get that would grant me that ability, but for the moment they were out of reach. I needed people that I could trust and have them assist me. The wild pussycats are probably my best option for this. Ragdoll search quirk would be invaluable in tracking potential henchmen, I thought with a nod. They are up-and-coming heroes too, so they aren't quite on the association's watchlist yet. Their HQ is here in Mizudafu, so I should probably get the ball rolling on this. Heading downstairs to get breakfast, Grandpa was up already and watching the news. As I expected, Technomaster was found dead this morning in his cell. With the number of countries he pissed off, I wasn't the least bit surprised he was killed. They ruled his death a suicide, but I was sure most people knew it really wasn't. In the state I left him in, he wouldn't have been able to move a finger, let alone his whole body. You seeing this? Grandpa said, pointing at the TV. Yeah, it's hard to believe that he's dead, I replied. I wonder which country did the deed. You are thinking the same thing I am, he chuckled. At least they are not pinning his death on you, that's the best outcome here. Agreeing with him, I poured myself a bowl of cereal, telling him that I was planning on meeting with some of the local heroes. He turned back to look at me with a smirk. Asking what was wrong, he point-blank asked me if I was going to flirt with the local, single heroines. Choking on a bite of cereal, I questioned him on why he thought I would be doing that. Gran Torino got me up to speed on all the single women here. You should really consider meeting some of them, he teased me. Gramps, we just had a conversation about pushing crap on me last night, I sighed. This is different, whether you do it is your choice. Just know that this geezer won't be around forever, he'd appreciate being able to see you happily married, he chuckled. If you don't, that's fine too. It's just there are so many cuties out there. Holding my face in my hand, I asked him why he was saying it like that. I am an old man, I am allowed to say things like that. Your grandmother was my only love, but that doesn't mean I didn't admire other beauties from afar, he snickered. I am surprised she didn't beat you for that, I said. Who says she didn't? He laughed. Finishing my bowl of cereal, I headed out to meet the feline-themed team. Chapter 10, Meeting the Locals. Cole POV. Heading straight over to their agency, I found it set up in a hole-in-the-wall office complex. It made sense that they were in a place like this as they were still climbing the ladder. I wasn't saying it was a bad thing, we all had to start somewhere and it was always in a crappy place. Even I started out at the bottom in all 5 prior lives, especially when I was an assassin. The man that took my orphan self and lived in a collapsed stable because he had lost everything to a corrupt nobleman who took his money and family, leaving him with only the clothes on his back. It's good to start in places like this, it keeps you humble and makes you cherish what you achieve. Grandpa should have made Dad go through this. If he was going to force Dad to be a hero, this was the way to do it, I thought. Walking up to the door, I knocked on it to see if anyone was here. Opening the door a few moments later, a very muscular man answered the door wearing a skirt and cat ears. Keeping myself from laughing, I introduced myself to him with a firm handshake. Yeah, I know who you are. Can I help you with something? He asked. I came here to introduce myself and get to know you all. We may end up working together in the future, so I'd like to know my potential allies, I told him. He replied, staring me in the eyes. Thinking I was about to get yelled at for some unknown reason, the leader of their group stepped in. Hold it, Tiger, don't judge him by his family's actions. I can take care of this, you can help Pixie Bob pack up the last few boxes, Mandalay told him, getting between us. Sorry about that, Tiger's cousin in the States had a really bad experience with your dad and he isn't a fan of the Bold Agency. Nodding my head, I admitted that my dad was a complete asshole with few equals. Apologizing for his cousin's treatment, I asked if he could tell me what specifically happened. Explaining that his cousin was turned away at the door, my dad apparently told her that her quirk was completely useless for hero's work. Based on what I saw in many online forums, she wouldn't have been the first treated that way by Dad. Her quirk is illumination, she can illuminate parts of her body or objects she touches, Tiger told me. She was devastated that your dad wouldn't even give her a chance to show him what she could do. I can understand why you are upset, my dad made a rash call with her and many others. If it doesn't add to the agency's strength, he doesn't want them. It sounds like she would be instrumental during evacuations and guiding rescue teams to aid people, I remarked. Giving me a firm nod, he adamantly agreed with me. Telling me that he would have been fine if he said no after she showed her quirk off, it was the fact he didn't give her the time of day that upset him. Apologizing again for my father's behavior, I assured him I was not my father. "We will see," he replied as he walked away. "Tiger is very defensive of his family and comrades. I am sorry if he takes it out on you," Mandalay told me. "It's okay, it's good that you have someone reliable like him among your ranks. Someone with loyalty like that is hard to come by," I said with a smile. "I am here to introduce myself, and also meet your team. I will be stationed here in Japan for a while, so I want to meet some of the local heroes. We may end up working together sometimes, so I'd like to put a name to a face." Smiling at me she agreed to introduce me to her comrades. Since I had already met Tiger, she introduced me to Ragdoll and Pixie Bob. Shaking their hands, I stealthily copied their quirks as they would definitely come in handy. Fortunately, they didn't even see the momentary, small red arc of electricity, so I didn't have anything to explain to them. "So you are the guy all over the news. It's nice to meet you," Ragdoll stated with a big smile. "You did a good job saving the applicants yesterday." "Thank you," I replied. "It's a pleasure to meet the four of you as well. I have researched your agency quite a lot. You all do great work." "Thank you," Pixie Bob shouted with excitement. "We are just finishing up our new office in the Beast's Forest. We will be moving in a few weeks." "That's good to hear. If you need any assistance moving furniture or anything, please let me know," I said, offering my services to help them. Taking me up on the offer, they said they needed help moving some of the bigger items here as they were a bit awkward to move around. Giving them my number, I told them to give me a call when they were ready to move. Sticking around for a few minutes to talk with them, I excused myself and continued on my way. To keep up appearances, I made several stops at other local agencies just so no one questioned why I only stopped by the Pussycats HQ. Once I had met with 12 different agencies, I went straight to patrolling the city. Hacking into 4 or 5 security cameras at a time, I searched around for any of all for one's lackeys or any criminal activity. Finding several criminals hiding in alleyways, I decided to wrangle them up since they were wide open. None of them were really serious threats, just some thugs that took paid work for some of the more prominent villains in Japan. That said, none of them had any information for me on All for One, but they did have some information on other groups. Unsurprisingly, there were several politicians in the running for influential positions that had some help from the criminal underworld. From what I learned, the thugs were part of a team that had captured the loved ones of their opponents. Currently holding them in a warehouse outside town, they were barely feeding them while they sat in a shipping container. Bearing in mind that the past few days had been rather hot, I was concerned that they were probably close to death. Heading over to the warehouse in question, I entered the structure through a light fixture in the rafters. -3RD person POV. Below Kessler sat a few more thugs in the middle of a card game. Since they had to stay nearby to make sure the prisoners didn't escape or cause any noise, the men were frustrated by the current situation. Having been sitting here for several days now, they were becoming stir-crazy with the lack of entertainment. Damn it! Where the hell is Tenzo and those other 3 idiots? They were supposed to be back over an hour ago, the strongest-looking man among them said. They went out for booze and women last night. It's my damn turn to get out of this rat hole. Cool it, Jet, we are getting paid to just sit here. This is probably the easiest job we have all had in a while, an Ice Blue Man remarked. Easy for you to say, Iceman, you can't enjoy a woman's touch cause you'll turn them to ice, Jet mocked. There is a woman that could probably take the cold, Iceman replied with a smirk. I intend to get some hired help to catch her because her dad's a fucking inferno. Staying out of their conversation, the other 3 men stayed quiet. Everyone knew who he was referring to, and they thought he was insane for going after Endeavor's daughter. If he found out, anyone involved would experience third-degree burns all over their body. If you are so pent up, just use one of the women we are watching. Since they have seen our faces, we can't let them go anyways, Iceman reminded him in a lowered voice. Breaking 1 or 2 of them won't change anything. Glancing back to the shipping container, Jet seemed to consider it for a moment. Folding his hand, he said he would be back in a bit. Getting up from his seat, He walked over to the container. He opened the doors, letting out a powerful, putrid smell that had been slowly building inside. Waving his arms a few times to air out the inside of the container, he flicked the lights on inside to reveal their prisoners. Scurrying behind their mothers, the few children they caught trembled with fear, remembering what happened to their bodyguards. "Ah, that's right, you fucking brats. Stay quiet and hide," Jet laughed as he cracked his neck. "All right then, who wants to offer their body to me? If no one volunteers, I will start cracking skulls open till someone does." Trying to shield their kids from him, the mothers were terrified of what happened either way. Before any of them moved forwards to volunteer, all the lights in the warehouse went out at once. "Piece of shit building, wasn't the mayor supposed to fix places like this?" Iceman shouted. "One of you slackers go check the panel, and make it snappy." Getting up to go check, the villains at the table heard a loud crackling noise coming from above them. Looking up, they watched a man drop down on them from the ceiling. Hitting the ground, a massive electric shockwave sent them all flying. Hearing the commotion, Jet ran over from the container to see Kessler standing where the table had once been. "Finally something interesting happens," Jet howled with excitement. "One of you fucking heroes finally found us, and it happens to be a newbie." Staring at him, Kessler looked at him with disappointment. Looking behind himself to make sure Kessler wasn't eyeing someone else, Jet became furious. "What you think you are fucking better than me?" Jet roared. "I'll fucking kill you." Running towards Kessler, Jet dove towards him but passed through him without any resistance. Hitting the ground hard, Jet tried to figure out what had just happened. He was certain he hit the hero head-on, but he sailed right through him. Turning around to figure out what happened, Jet watched a massive chunk of concrete slam into his face like a freight train. Crashing into the wall behind him, Jet was out like a light in an instant. Getting up off the floor, Iceman shook off the shock from Kessler's surprise attack. Seeing that Jet was down for the count already, Iceman became worried that the rumors about Kessler were true. He was supposed to be an inexperienced pro hero, but he got the drop on them with minimal effort and had already taken their strongest fighter out in seconds. Can we talk this out?" Iceman questioned, slowly making his way to Kessler. "Don't even bother, I already know what you were trying to do," Kessler said, snapping his fingers. Bursting out of the ground, a tendril of red and black magma came out of the ground. Grabbing him before he could react, Iceman's movements were completely sealed, as were the rest of his team members. Trying to use his ice quirk to cool the magma, his ice wouldn't even form because of how hot it was. "It is napalm, good luck putting it out," Kessler told him. "If you manage to break it, you'll be scorched instantly by it." Immediately stopping what he was doing, he nervously looked at Kessler. "I thought you only used electricity," Iceman said. "Huh, I can use far more than that, but you won't remember that," Kessler replied as he cracked a smile as lightning started dancing around him. What are you doing? "You'll kill us," Iceman screamed. "Don't worry, you'll live through this, maybe," Kessler remarked. "You only have yourself to blame for this, taking women and children hostages. Even going as far as to suggest raping them and a colleague of mine's daughter. Consider this your comeuppance for all the crap you have done. Discharging a pulse of electricity."
That's all, folks.